Haley, thanks for being with us here on the Hill on NewsNation. First time, I believe, so welcome to the show. We appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. Okay, so Donald Trump's campaign, we saw them, Ambassador, lay out today how they're going to get to that magic number of 1,215 delegates. We heard from you today as well as to why you're still in the campaign, but we didn't hear necessarily the how you're going to get there. Right off the top here, can you tell us what states are you going to win? What's the path forward for you here as you see it, Ambassador?
Well, I answered that in my speech. I know that everybody wants to talk about what states we're going to win. We're focused on the state of South Carolina right now. Our goal is to close that gap in South Carolina, and then the very next day we're headed to Michigan. This is about the fact that the majority of Americans dislike both candidates. 70% of Americans say they don't want a Trump-Biden rematch. We are giving them a choice. This is not something where we anoint a king in America. We can't just say after 2 states or 3 states that it's over. Everybody deserves the right to vote. Let's let them vote. 10 days after South Carolina, 20-plus states and territories will have voted. We need to let this play out. We need to let them know that there's a choice with this, because right now you have 2 candidates in their 80s. And we need to know that if we're going to deal with a nuclear issue with Russia, or we're going to deal with these cyber attacks in China on our electricity grid, we need to know that someone's willing to work day and night for the next 8 years to make sure that we keep Americans safe. That's our focus of what we're trying to do. And so we're trying to give people the choice that they want.
I hear you on the choice and talking about South Carolina and then Michigan and Super Tuesday on after that. But when you look at the Republican nominees just this century alone, Ambassador, modern politics, Trump won New York, Romney won Massachusetts, McCain, Arizona, Bush, Texas. Can you explain to the casual viewer who sees the polls, you down potentially 20, 30 points in your home state, and they might wonder, why is she down in her home state? What would you tell them?
You know, what I would tell them is that they said I wouldn't make it to Iowa, and we defeated a dozen of the fellas, and we didn't just make it to Iowa. We came within 1% of second place. We had 20%. They said I was down the day of the election of New Hampshire. They said I was down 30 points. We got 43% of the vote. This is the only poll that matters, is the one that happens in South Carolina. That's what we're going to do. We're having hundreds of people show up at our rallies every single day, and we're getting people to the polls, and that's what matters. And I think that if you want to look at a poll, look at the one where 70% of Americans say they don't want a Trump-Biden rematch. Look at the polls where they show that Trump can't beat Biden. And the fact is, if we want to right the ship in America, we have to win. And you can't win if you put a candidate up that's unable to win the general election. And that's really important.
You talk about both candidates, right? Donald Trump and the current president, Joe Biden, and you talked about their age. You said earlier today the presidency is the most demanding job. I'm not sure there's anyone who would dispute that, but you also said this, quote, you don't give it, meaning the job, to someone who is at risk of dementia, end quote. Do you believe that Donald Trump has dementia currently? Do you believe that the current president, Joe Biden, has dementia at this moment?
I think if you ask any doctor, they will tell you that when you are getting in your 80s, you are prone to having that. Look, there's a reason pilots can't fly.
But what about right now?
After 65. There's a reason military, they make you retire before 65. The focus is we don't need someone going in. Look at Joe Biden 2 years ago and look at him today. We have serious issues. It is not normal to have an open border where we don't stop people from coming in. It is not normal that we focus more on gender pronouns than reading and math. That is what Joe Biden's giving us. But look at what Donald Trump's giving us. It is not normal that you go and say you're going to ban your opponent's supporters and not allow them into your group. It is not normal that you go inside with dictators and tell them to invade our allies. It's not normal that you mock military members. None of that is normal behavior from either one of them. What I am saying is Americans are saying in polls, 70%, that they want normal again. They don't want chaos. They don't want this mess. They want to know that government is now serving them again. And they're not feeling that. Think about what our kids have gone through. In the last few years, they've gone through COVID. They look at the debt and they wonder how they're going to have to be responsible for that. They look at the fact that they may not be able to buy a home or get a job, and all they feel is anger and chaos. We owe it to our kids to give them something that is normal and stable again. We owe it to them to make sure we right the ship, and that's what I'm trying to do.
You talk about chaos and stability. I heard you say today, Ambassador, that you are going to be hanging in this race until all votes are cast. And that made me think, okay, let's look at the schedule here for a second. Donald Trump, we know, will be the first former president of the United States to stand a criminal trial starting on March 25th. Legal observers that we've had on this show say maybe it'll last 2 months, 2.5 months. Okay, that brings us to early June. The last races in the Republican primary are June 4th. There's a handful of states on that date, as you know. So just getting right to it, Ambassador, is part of your strategy to hang in there to see if Donald Trump is indeed convicted?
My strategy is to make sure that the American people have their voices heard. But it is also acknowledging the realities that he will be in court March and April, May and June. More judgments or court cases will be heard. He himself has said he's going to spend more time this year in a courtroom than he is going to be on the campaign trail. That's a problem. If you look at what he's been talking about the last few weeks, all he is doing is talking about himself. Even when it came to Navalny, he didn't go and criticize Putin. He didn't talk about the courage of Navalny for fighting corruption, even though Putin murdered him. Instead, he puts up a tweet and compares himself to Navalny in the way he's being treated in these court cases. We can't have these kind of distractions and expect to win.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.